we wanted to share an update about NASA's Operation IceBridge mission. And today we're going to be hearing from Lynette Boisvert and Nathan Kurtz about the activities that were coordinated this past spring. So yeah, take it away.
I am currently downloading the slides now, so as soon as they're about to be ready, so I'm going to put them up.
Lynette and Nathan, you want to just get rolling by telling us a little bit about IceBridge? Oops, there they are.
Do you want to go first? You can go first. I think she's in charge of the screen. Yeah. Yep. You want to go?
Okay.
At least get
Okay.
the
Yeah.
screen
So
together.
Lynette and I are going to try to share a screen here and talk on this. Yeah, we mostly wanted to give an update on IceBridge and especially talk about the last campaign that we did for the Arctic sea ice. So next slide. So I'm not sure how familiar everyone is with IceBridge, but this is just a general overview of IceBridge, some of the accomplishments, some of the things that have been done, where all we've flown. So again, focusing on the Arctic, here you can see mainly we've been flying in the Western Arctic for sea ice coverage. In recent years, we've expanded to a bit of the Eastern Arctic. Last year, we flew out of Svalbard, getting into some of the Eastern Arctic there. This year, we weren't able to do that for some logistics reasons, but again, hoping to do that still again in the future. But again, this past year, as we did last year as well, we flew a mission more in the Western Chukchi Sea, which we were able to get again this year. So basically, this is a summary of where all IceBridge is flown. Particular for sea ice, the results from IceBridge are more things like mapping the snow depth over the Arctic sea ice, using the laser altimetry to get freeboard, and then combining that with the snow depth to get how thick the ice is and look at changes. And then a number of other studies that come from that.
I guess like surface roughness is one of them.
Yeah, things like surface roughness, surface temperature.
Oh, yeah, surface
Again, all kinds of instruments on IceBridge that we're taking, but for most of this, we're focused on the ice thickness, the ice roughness, the snow depth. Okay, next slide. And so this is just one more overview slide just to show the purpose of IceBridge. Really, IceBridge was meant to bridge the gap between the ICEX satellite, which was up from 2003 to 2009, and then to bridge the gap to the ICEX mission, which is slated for launch in September 12th this year. So IceBridge is set to go to fiscal year 2020, and so we'll talk about that a little bit later. Okay, next slide.
This is great.
So this is just a summary of what was all accomplished this past spring in the Arctic. So I'm just going to talk about the sea ice flights here. So we had 8 sea ice flights, getting broad coverage of the Arctic Ocean, and some of the highlights for this year. We flew coordinated tracks. So we did underfly ICEX 2 tracks, or future ICEX 2 tracks, in hopes of constraining some of the sea surface height variability in those regions. And then we also coordinated underflights with Sentinel-3A and Cryosat-2 as well. Especially those satellites are pretty important for tying together what we see on the regional scale from IceBridge to getting that more pan-Arctic view of how thick the sea ice is, and things like developing algorithms, doing CalVal, assessing accuracy, all those things are important. And doing those year to year has been quite important, as well as some new studies that are going to come out are going to show. So in addition to the ESA satellites that we underflew, there was only a couple more in situ campaigns that we were able to fly over this year. There wasn't as much going on at the time. So one being ICEX, which we'll have a specific slide on, but the other was a shorefast ice site just north of Alert. Christian Haas was coordinating that. So they took measurements, or they might be taking measurements. I think it was like a few weeks after we had flown over. And so in addition to that, IceBridge has been continually updating its instrument suites in small ways. So some of the major updates that have happened in the past few years have been improving the snow radar to get higher range resolution so we can improve our snow depth retrievals. And this also updating the ATM system to look at, it's called dual color. So this is to look at surface penetration into snow of green lasers. So the ATM is traditionally a green laser. ICET1 was an infrared laser, which should not penetrate into the snowpack. ICET2 is a green laser, which again could potentially penetrate into the snowpack. So in order to test how much penetration is impacting our retrieval algorithms, the ATM, so the laser altimeter group at NASA Wallops, has developed this dual color system. So it takes both IR and green laser data, and it's goes through the same optical paths. And essentially what they're doing this past campaign was doing some further testing to see if this can be put to science quality use. And everything that I've heard from them says that they think that this can be done in time for the launch of ICET2. Okay, next slide.
Because they started doing it on the Kanger flights over the land ice,
Yeah.
the IR stuff.
So a couple of slides on some of the coordination efforts that we did. So we did fly over the ICEX camp on April 8th. And this was some excellent coordination between Melinda Webster and John Sontag, our navigator, on board to try to hit where the ICEX camp was. So Melinda and John were getting updates, I think it was every half hour or hour or so, and trying to extrapolate those with the ice drift to know where we should fly over. So this is just a picture, both in visible and IR, of overflight of the ICEX camp. And so you can see some of the old runway, and there's some other features, plane, some buoy sites left behind, and some other items that were left behind. So we flew over, I think it was not long after the ice camp was being evacuated there. Okay, next slide. And also on our flights that were based out of Fairbanks, Alaska, we also flew over some buoy arrays from the International Arctic Buoy Programme. Melinda has more detailed information on this if you'd like more details on it. But you can see from the images that we are able to, again, fly over the buoys, which is, again, this coordinated effort to try to track these, extrapolate these moving targets to hit them from the plane. We weren't actually really able to see the buoys from the plane. It was only looking at imagery after the fact that we were able to see that we had flown over them. So again, we took some complementary measurements of the buoy sites and the ICEX camps, things like surface topography, sea ice thickness, snow depth, temperature. And so what we can do from IceBridge is compare and coordinate with these, and then look at the point measurements that are taken from the things like the buoys, or a little bit larger scale from the ICEX camp, and then extrapolate those to the large scale from IceBridge. Okay, next slide. Okay, one other just science highlight from this past campaign. So we flew over this Polynya that formed north of Greenland in the winter of 2018. It's a pretty anomalously large area in this, what's usually covered by old and thick ice. And so you can see in the AMSRE sea ice concentration, it's circled there. This is when it was open in late February, when it was open. By the time we had flown over it with IceBridge, about a month or so later, it had closed up. So in terms of the ice concentration, it looked like it had closed up. But again, you can see the track, the zigzag that we hit going through parts of this Polynya. Visually, we could see that there's definitely, the ice looked very different than the normal ice in that area. So, I mean, normally in this area, I'm used to seeing just very rough, beat up ice, heavily ridged. But you can see in that visible image picture, there's some deformation, but there's a lot of areas of very thin ice, young ice that were from this refrozen area. So we did do a quick processing of some of the snow data, and that's shown there. And you can see that there's definitely thin snow over what used to be some of the Polynya area. And so this is a potentially interesting study area. But what I really want to highlight with this too is that we do produce a quick look sea ice product from IceBridge, which includes things like snow depth, freeboard thickness, and that should be available publicly in hopefully about a month or so. Okay, next slide. And Lynette's gonna present from here.
Okay, yeah, so this is just a table showing IceBridge's schedule for the past 3 years and this year and the next 2 years. And as Nathan said, we just finished the Arctic Spring campaign on the NASA P3. And this fall, we're gonna have another Antarctic Spring campaign out of Punta Arenas, Chile, using our NASA DC-8 plane. And then we still have plans for a spring campaign in 2019 in the Arctic using the NASA P3. And the fall campaign or the spring campaign of 2020 are still up in the air. We're still deciding on which to do. Okay, and that's it. Next slide. And then Melinda said, you guys like seeing pictures of ice. So here's some pictures of sea ice that I took on land ice flights this year out of Kanger on IceBridge. So just all the different pretty ice types that I saw. That's all. I think there's one more slide of pictures, but again, yeah. You can see like some thin forming ice, and then this iceberg in the sea ice picture that everyone likes here at NASA. And then some really thin ice forming at the glacier terminus there. That's it. I think that was it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
Oh, and then I just threw in some plots from some of our sit reps of some of what the elevation looks like over sea ice from ATM. So you can see like leads in the sea ice and rougher ice in these swaths.
See some ridges.
Yeah, ridges.
Sort of longer linear formation of the ridges.
Yeah. And that's it, I believe.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, we can either take questions now or if we want to wait until later.
I had a quick question now, and I'm sorry I don't remember this, Nathan. When you said that you were coordinating underflights with Sentinel and Cryosat-2, were those coordinated in time as well?
Yeah,
Great.
we try to fly under the satellites and try to minimize any time difference. And I think in both instances when we were able to fly we did 2 Sentinel underflights and 1 Cryosat underflight. I think one of the Sentinel flights and one of the Cryosat underflights, we were on the line as the satellite passed over. I think one of the other Sentinel underflights, I think we had missed it by a couple hours or something like that. I'd have to check, but it's not too far different in time.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you. Are there other questions?
It's Martin, if I could make a couple of points. One is, before I left the Office of Science and Technology Policy, in the final few months I was there, I was working on developing a coordinated, integrated interagency Arctic Ocean study built around the ONR Stratified Ocean Dynamics of the Arctic Research Initiative, or SODA. And this interagency effort we're calling SODA Plus because it adds the other agencies that want to get involved They include BOEM and Department of Interior, NOAA, and NASA. And it was a couple of weeks ago, I think, I was on a call with Tom Wagner and others from NASA, in which they confirmed that IceBridge would get involved in SODA Plus, which was very good news because that was one of my hopes. It seemed an obvious connection. SODA Plus will have an array of drifting buoys on, in, and under the ice, and so we look forward to developing a flight plans for spring 29 overflights of the SODA study area. And if you do, if it turns out you do have some extra money that enables you to do a fall 2018 Arctic campaign, then that would be great too, because ONR will have 2 ships in the study area in September, deploying a large array of hardware for a year-long observing period. My second point is to make a plea to use the correct terminology. You described a Polynya north of Greenland, and you said it's anomalous, and I think you meant anomalous because it had never been seen there before. Well, that means it's not a Polynya, because a Polynya is a recurring feature known to appear in the same place year after year, same time, and so on. So I think what you saw was an anomalously large area of open water. And I just make this plea because if we can't communicate properly amongst ourselves using correct terminology, how can we do that with an outside audience and be credible? Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Martin. Yeah, so with regard to your first point, yeah, NASA headquarters has been in contact and looking into supporting SODA. Again, I think Tom Wagner had been looking into how IceBridge and ICEX could support SODA next spring, and so there were some discussions on that. With regard to the fall, I think that's still very much up in the air, but have to see how things go for fall campaigns. And with regard to the second point, yeah, point taken. Yes, let's use proper terminology to communicate anomalous open water area.
So this is Jackie. How are things looking for the launch of ICEX 2?
So very good, Jackie. Yeah, so far looking like it's on time. Reviews are going well. Instrument testing, nothing major has happened with the satellite. So so far looking to be on time. Fingers
Super.
crossed that a number of things can happen between now and then, but so far so good.
Good. And
Martin.
Whoops, sorry. Go ahead, Martin.
No, you go ahead first, Jackie.
The other question that I have, it looks from the chart that you had that IceBridge is certainly kind of sunsetting. Is there any plan for any kind of an airborne campaign once ICEX 2 is up?
So ICEX 2 will have CalVal work that's being done, more specific to ICEX 2. There's been talk at the headquarters level about airborne campaigns following IceBridge. Nothing concrete that I think has really come out of it though. So, I mean, I think a lot of people in the community do support airborne work like this and want to see, in some form continue, but, and I know I would like to, but that's a question for headquarters.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Martin?
Yeah, thanks. Just an hour ago, I learned from Pat Jackeberger-Jellison at NASA that the Grace follow-on mission the satellite is scheduled for launch today from Vandenberg in California. It's not directly relevant to sea ice, but it's vastly important for glaciers and ice sheets and sea level research and other related stuff. So everyone keep your fingers and toes crossed that launch is successful and insertion into orbit is successful, because it's such an important mission for polar research and global research.
Thanks, Martin. Any other questions or comments? If not, thank you so much, Lynette and Nathan. As always, it's great to see what IceBridge is up to, and the coverage remains good. That's great.